Hello and welcome to Access Asia. Coming up, Australian bushfires are devastating wildlife, and experts say it could take decades for the country's unique flora and fauna to recover. Pink Himalayan salt is booming in popularity, but we'll tell you why Pakistan is feeling salty over its prized natural resource. And if K-pop does not strike the right chord with you, maybe you'd like South Korea's growing heavy metal genre. We go underground with Monster Dive. Now, more than 60,000 square kilometers have been burned. Hundreds of fires are still raging, and experts say Australia's bushfire crisis could get worse before it gets better. And though people can flee or be evacuated, the flames are devastating wildlife. Even for the animals that do survive, their habitat is destroyed, so the true scale of loss is not yet clear.
Dead animals scattered across the grounds in the aftermath of the bushfire that reduced almost half of Kangaroo Island to ashes. It's the military that's in charge of recovering the carcasses and rescuing those who've managed to survive. Only a very small number of animals are being taken to rescue centres, a sign of how devastating the fires have been to wildlife.
Some of the estimates I've heard are about 30,000 koalas that have been killed. And when you look at the number of koalas that we've actually got here, we've got about 60 that have been brought in from the fires out of 30,000 that have been killed or injured. That's not a very high number. Their survival rate is very low.
It's difficult to calculate the exact number, but 1 billion animals are believed to have perished since the crisis broke out in September, pushing some species to the brink of extinction, with fears of long-term damage to the ecosystem. The government has now pledged $50 million Australian to wildlife recovery.
One of the biggest threats that wildlife faces post-bushfire is feral animals. So we need to get those areas fenced off, we need to identify habitat, and we need to provide food, shelter and water for the animals.
But other feral animals, such as camels, are now the target of a mass cull. Up to 10,000 camels are being shot dead from helicopters as herds venture into villages in desperate search for food and water.
There are things that I could have handled on the ground much better.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison has faced heavy criticism over his handling of the crisis and has yet to announce any new policies, as protesters rally against inaction over climate change.
It's not like we can say it's going to get better. There is no moisture in the ground. It's going to get a lot worse.
I can't even watch the news, because it's heartbreaking. It's our doing. If we kill Mother Earth, what have we got?
But for now, fires are showing little sign of dwindling, with clouds of smoke travelling all the way to South America.
Now, India is one of the largest consumers of pesticides, but one place in the country has gone the opposite direction. Sikkim claims to be the first 100% organic state in the world. The region slowly phased out chemical fertilizers and pesticides before implementing a total ban. James Wilson reports.
In India's Sikkim region, in the shadow of the Himalayas, there's been a radical change in the way the region grows its food. The area is home to thousands of arable farmers, and 100% of its products are organic. The most noticeable result was the beautiful food in local markets, but it all comes at a cost, and there's been a price hike of 15%.
Yeah, for healthy living. I don't want to pay my entire money in the medicine.
Like all their neighbours, this young farmer and his parents are growing exclusively organic veg. To nurture their crops, they used a compost made from leaves, cow dung and urine, and the result is a more natural product. However, for farmers in the region, they don't have a choice. The use of chemical pesticides and fertiliser is a crime, punishable by a fine and up to 3 months in prison. And for some, the transition towards organic farming was a tough one.
The first years were hard. The chemical products we'd seen being used made the soil hard. They didn't give us much. But now we have more vegetables. They're bigger than ever.
A return to organic farming flies in the face of how most of Indian agriculture works. This is the reality in most of the country. The use of chemicals is normal, and farming is usually intensive. Sikkim, nestled on India's border with China, is different. A green oasis wedged between two of the world's biggest users of pesticide. Once the area was just like most of its neighbours, and change took a lot of effort. Farmers in the region were given help with making the transition, and local authorities organised training.
These are papaya seedlings. The seeds had been provided by our department, like horticulture department. Here we raise them in a so that the plants become disease-free, and when we give it to the farmers, so there will be a very less mortality.
It's taken 13 years and 13 million euros of investment, but authorities believe the region's conversion to organic farming has been a success. They've also launched a programme to tackle plastic waste and begin reforesting the area. It's all helped propel this small corner of India to the forefront of the country's efforts to tackle climate change.
Well, from the east to the west, the popularity of pink Himalayan salt has exploded in recent years. Its qualities are praised in kitchens, beauty salons, and health spas. So even if you are familiar with it, you might not know that it comes from Pakistan. However, the country is unable to fully reap the profits. Our correspondents, Shazeb Wala and Solen Fioriti, explain.
This salt range is hidden just a few hundred kilometers from the peaks of the Himalayas, and underneath these rocky hills is the Kura mine.
When Alexander the Great's armies came here, their horses started to lick the rocks. That's how they discovered the rocks were made of salt.
Kura is Asia's largest salt mine. Industrial extraction started here in 1872 under the British rule. Today, the mine has 17 floors and is a popular tourist destination.
Because this salt is very healthy, it has become very fashionable. It's composed of 3 minerals. The white part corresponds to sodium chloride, the pink to magnesium, and the red to iron.
The tunnels are deployed over a stretch of 40 kilometers. About 500 miners extract more than 2,000 tons of salt every day. The mining methods haven't changed since the 19th century.
I dug a hole there. I'm now making gunpowder capsules. To make a proper blast, I have to put 4 of them in the hole. Then I hook this wire to start the fire.
We need to get Chinese-manufactured cutting machines. We need to put an end to this manual system, which doesn't guarantee sufficient security, and our productivity is too low.
The vast majority of the production is exported, about 400,000 tons of salt each year for an amount less than $50 million. Experts say the revenue earned is far too little. On top of using obsolete extraction methods, Pakistan exports most of its salt at very cheap rates and is unable to convert raw salt rocks into finished products. So other countries like China and India treat Pakistani salt before exporting it to the West, where it's sold at higher rates as a gourmet product. But this situation is about to change. Since tensions escalated with neighboring India last August, all trade was put to an end. The Pakistani government is now willing to adopt reforms to facilitate exports.
The government has stopped selling salt to India. I think this is good for us. We extract the salt, it is our product.
Although many exporters regret losing Indian customers, others have chosen to invest in machines that can convert rock salt into finished products. Pink salt could help rebuild the country's image on the international stage, and some hope it could become a symbol for Pakistan.
Well, Korea's K-pop industry might be the billion-dollar sector that captures all the headlines, but there's also a healthy heavy metal scene in the country these days. Underground venues are popping up across the capital. Olivia Salazar-Winspear checks in with the group Monsters Dive, one of the metal bands leading the charge.
Underground sounds, quite literally, as the group Monsters Dive play to a crowd of metal fans in this basement venue. Since it's quite a niche scene, heavy metal musicians in South Korea often have a day job and keep headbanging for evenings and weekends.
South Koreans tend to follow a trend and flock towards one thing. If it's K-pop, then they'll only listen to K-pop. In Korea, K-pop and hip-hop are popular. But other than that, most other types of music are sidelined.
Indeed, heavy metal's a far cry from the slick, choreographed moves of K-pop. The genre dominates Korea's music industry and is worth some $5 billion a year. Whereas small-scale heavy metal gigs typically earn only a couple of $100 a night. And even Monsters Dive's lead singer says that he listens to some lighter material from time to time.
Honestly, sometimes I have a hard time listening to metal because it hurts my ears. And when that's the case, I listen to K-pop, especially girl groups like Twice, On My Girl, and Blackpink.
With many of Seoul's music venues reserved for karaoke and upscale bars, some promoters are now setting up in the industrial neighbourhood of Mulai, where, appropriately, they're converting former metal workshops into live performance spaces.
And finally, we leave you with the 65th annual Shinto purification ritual in Tokyo. In temperatures most of us would wear coats and even gloves in, over 100 brave people took turns and stepped into an ice bath. Mostly male participants wore traditional loincloths, while a handful of women wore thin white gowns. It's believed that the cleansing purifies the body and the spirit for the new year. Some of those taking part said they were praying for world peace. I think I would be praying for a sauna. Braver than I am. That's it for this edition. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.